Anthology on the bad, short-lived, and forgotten shows and events in TV history. You are listening to It Was a Thing on TV.
Trust me, I know what I'm doing.
Minisode 35, submission 1057, the 1985 NBA Draft Lottery. The 1985 NBA Draft Lottery was held on May 12th, 1985, and it aired on the CBS television network. Now, this week is the 40th anniversary of a first in sports, a concept called a draft lottery. Now, Mike, prior to 1985 in the NBA, the first two picks in the draft that year were decided between a coin toss featuring the two worst teams in the NBA.
Not necessarily fair for the teams that didn't make the playoffs, but, a 50-50 chance at getting a potential franchise-changing player, not a bad deal.
But by the mid 80s, I think the whole idea of having the two worst teams be in the running for the number one pick kind of had concerns, because if you remember, Mike, in the, I think it was 82, 83 seasons, the Houston Rockets tanked to get the top two worst records, and they ended up winning the coin toss both of those years, and they ended up getting Ralph Sampson and Akeem Olajuwon.
Exactly. And right there, that changes the franchise a little bit. Ralph Sampson didn't have as long of a career as maybe he expected, but Akeem Olajuwon, he only won 2 titles with the Rockets.
But they did go to a finals together in 86 against the Celtics.
Yeah, like the one year in the 80s that the Lakers didn't make it at all.
So the NBA decided, you know what? We're going to change the way we distribute the number one pick. So what they did was they had the 7 non-playoff teams in 1985, which were the Golden State Warriors, the Sacramento Kings, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Seattle Supersonics, the New York Knicks, the Indiana Pacers, and the Atlanta Hawks, all competing for the number one pick. And who was the number one pick that year, Mike?
Patrick Ewing out of Georgetown.
Yes. And obviously, coming into this draft, probably maybe the most hyped pick at number one in terms of pedigree since probably Bill Walton, since he had been to the Final Four 3 out of his 4 years in Georgetown and won a national championship in 84. So the way this was done in the 85 lottery, now we know we have the ping pong balls now, but the way it was done was you had an envelope of all 7 teams that didn't make the playoffs in a drum that'd be rolled like 10 times. And then David Stern would pick something out of the drum. This would be pick 1, this would be pick 2, this would be pick 3, etc. So we're actually going to watch the process right here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. For the very best college basketball players in the country, the annual NBA Draft is the gateway to the highest basketball competition in the world. For the 23 NBA teams and their fans, the draft is their future. This year's NBA Draft will be held on June 18th, and by resolution of the NBA Board of Governors, the first 7 selections in that draft have been awarded to the 7 teams that did not qualify for the 1985 NBA playoffs. The order of those selections is to be determined by a random drawing. That's why we're here. With me are representatives of the 7 participating teams. From the Atlanta Hawks, Stan Kasten. From the Golden State Warriors, Al Attles. From the Indiana Pacers, Herb Simon. From the Los Angeles Clippers, Carl Shear. From the New York Knicks, Dave DeBuscher. From the Sacramento Kings, Bob Cook. and from the Seattle Supersonics, Lenny Wilkins. The 7 numbers behind me represent the first 7 positions in the draft. The identity of the team selecting at each position will be determined by a random draw of 7 envelopes. Each envelope contains the logo of one of the participating teams. The first envelope drawn from the drum will represent the first pick in the draft and will be placed behind me, unopened, in position number 1. The remaining envelopes will then be selected and placed under numbers 2 through 7 in the order drawn. The envelopes will then be opened, starting with number 7 and proceeding to number 1. Within the past hour, each of the logos has been placed in an envelope and sealed by Jack Wagner, a partner in the international accounting firm of Ernst & Winnie. Mr. Wagner has certified to me, first, that he alone was present in the room when he placed the logos in the envelopes. Second, that he has since maintained continuous and exclusive possession of the envelopes. And third, that as of this moment, he does not know which logo is in which envelope. I will now ask Mr. Wagner to place the envelopes in the drum.
Okay, so Mike, how would you describe this drum right here that he's putting the envelopes in?
I would say the sphere is probably about 3 feet in diameter. It's big enough where the envelopes are sort of mixing up. I mean, you're showing the video now with the sound off, and they do get thoroughly mixed. It's not like they're just like flopping around and whatever envelope was on the bottom after a rotation is on top and vice versa. It looked like a very thorough mix.
Okay, so now NBA Commissioner David Stern is going to pick the envelopes right now. So I want you to pay attention to the first envelope that he's going to be pulling out from the drum, okay?
The team whose logo is in this envelope will have the first pick in the NBA draft.
Okay, now, Mike, describe what David Stern did when he was picking the envelope.
Well, he didn't pick the top envelope, and he didn't pick the bottom envelope. He was sort of, I don't want to say digging in there. I mean, there's only 7 envelopes. But like I said, he didn't go for the obvious choices. He took, like, probably the 5th from the top or something. He went really in there. But you can't see a logo, so there's no suspicion there in terms of what team was chosen.
Okay, so David Stern has picked envelopes 2 through 7, who are going to be picks 2 through 7. So now let's go through the process. And now I should also note, hosting this for CBS, this first ever draft lottery, Pat O'Brien.
He was a big personality for CBS Sports back in the day.
Yeah, especially on the NBA on CBS. So let's play it out. Hear from David Stern and Pat as this drawing, as David Stern's about to open the envelopes.
Here we go. I will now open the envelopes.
Nervous laughter here.
The 7th pick in the 1985 NBA draft goes to the Golden State Warriors.
And the first team to hate the lottery, because they would have had the 1 or 2 pick in the coin toss.
Now, as Pat mentions, previously they would have had one of the top 2 picks. But as the lottery turned out and how the draft played out, as we'll get to at the end, this actually worked out pretty well for Golden State in the end. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to David Stern opening the envelopes.
The 6th pick goes to the Sacramento Kings.
There are 5 left: Atlanta, Indiana, the Clippers, New York, and Seattle. Sacramento disappointed.
The 5th pick goes to the Atlanta Hawks.
Atlanta Hawks get 5, leaving Indiana, the Clippers, New York, and Seattle.
The 4th pick goes to the Seattle Supersonics.
And the excitement builds, and I think we'll just let this one play. 3 left. Indiana, LA, New York.
The 3rd pick goes to the Los Angeles Clippers.
Dave DeBuscher.
Okay, so Mike, we're down to the Knicks and we're down to the Pacers.
Where's Patrick Ewing going to go? I mean, we know the answer 40 years later, but in 1985, he might be going to Indiana.
Yeah, and he would have probably reflected like a big renaissance in the city of Indianapolis, considering they just got the Colts a year ago. Let's go to David Stern as he opens number 2, and we'll, as a result, find out who is going to win the services of Patrick Ewing.
The 2nd pick in the 1985 NBA draft goes to the Indiana Pacers.
The horseshoe works. Basketball is back in New York City, my friends.
Dave DeBuscher looks very relieved that he has won the number 1 pick.
He had that look of resignation on his face. Like, I couldn't tell if he needed to go to the bathroom that time or if he was just, oh, thank God that's over.
Well, think about it. Pat said, as it was revealed that the Knicks had won, basketball was back in New York City. You have to think that in 1985, everybody, if you were a basketball fan in New York City, and you had seen Patrick Ewing for years with Georgetown, especially when they were playing St. John's, because Georgetown, St. John's back in the 80s, that was like the big game in college basketball. You were hoping, if you were a Knicks fan, that you were going to win that lottery in 85. And sure enough, they did. But the one thing I wanted to mention, now I said to pay attention when David Stern picked the envelope. If you notice real closely, the envelope that David Stern picked had like a bend in the corner, and that has fueled conspiracy theories like for years that the draft lottery in 85 was rigged. Now, Mike, I want your opinion on that.
Well, first and foremost, I'd make sure that Uri Geller never touches those envelopes ever again. Bend. But besides that, it's possible. I mean, I've heard different conspiracy theories about that pick. The bend is one of them. I read something about that the Knicks envelope was frozen, so it was cold to the touch, so Stern could easily discern which one was the Knicks pick. But also another theory, and I just found this on Wikipedia, is that the accountant from Ernst & Whinney, who you heard earlier, that's the same firm that's used by Gulf and Western, who at that time were the owners of the Knicks. Potential collusion there. Are any of these true? We'll never know. Not that it matters. 40 years later, David Stern has passed on. Dave DeBuscher has passed on. I'd put money on the accountant passing on, because he'd probably be close to 100 at this point, so he's surely not with us any longer. But conspiracy theories abound, and also, just remember, since we're talking about New York City, this is the biggest market in the United States. If the NBA wants eyes, you get the next big thing to play for the big city.
Now, let's review the first 7 picks in the 1985 NBA draft. So we know Patrick Ewing went to the Knicks. The second pick by the Pacers was Wayman Tisdale. The Clippers with number 3 picked Benoit Benjamin. Number 4 by the Sonics, the X-Man, Xavier McDaniel from the Atlanta Hawks at number 5.
John Koncak.
And then Sacramento at number 6 picked Joe Klein. But I said that although Golden State at the time was angry because they would have had in previous years the top 2 picks with the coin toss, getting number 7 in the lottery worked out because I mentioned St. John's and Georgetown. Well, there was a player on St. John's on that 1985 Final Four team who was a teammate of Patrick Ewing's in the 84 Olympics and then later the Dream Team that Golden State took at number 7. And that would be Chris Mullin.
See, it all works out in the end, Golden State.
Well, guys, you'd think that would do it for this mini-sode, but nope, because I got an eBay prices right for this mini-sode. Now, I mentioned Pat O'Brien was the host for the CBS coverage of the 1985 NBA Draft Lottery. Well, guys, our eBay Price is Right item, look in the chat right now. You are bidding on an Inkworks autographed Pat O'Brien card from Scooby-Doo 2. And what you are bidding on is the price combined with the shipping. And I should note that this item on eBay, there's several, but this item particularly comes from Australia. So you're bidding on the price of the item plus the shipping. And I will start the bidding with you, Mike.
And this is in Australian dollars, I presume.
I think so, yes.
Shipping from Australia is mighty expensive. I'm going to say combined $35.
In Australian dollars.
Doesn't matter if it's Australian or American. I'll say 35.
Okay, Chico.
I'm going to take it to an even 50.
50. Okay. So the Australian price, $75 plus $23.25 shipping for a combined total of $93.25. Chico wins. Now American, $48, shipping $14.88. So it'd be $62.88 American.
No. Well, first off, I didn't know till now Pat O'Brien was in Scooby-Doo too. But no, I would not pay close to $100 American, Australian, whatever for that. Not a chance.
There are several sellers that have it for $30 American. So you're getting ripped off.
Even at $30, I don't think I'd pay that price. Why can't it be like a John Shuck card where you can get it like $20 shipped? See, that's a fair price. $20, I'd buy it. But $30, $35, $100, hard pass.
Yeah, that's a no for me, dog.
Well, what can we say about the 1985 NBA Draft Lottery? The Knicks ended up with Patrick Ewing. The Warriors ended up with Chris Mullin. And 10 rolls of the drum in 1985 gave us, 40 years later, a very memorable thing on TV. So that's going to do it for this mini-sode. And we'll see you with more episodes coming down the pike real soon. Row!
Patrick?
What's up, Ryan?
Oops.
Get dunked on by Patrick Ewing.
Oh my gosh.